this one, this one, and this. We went to Sunday school together, went to vacation Bible school together. We were in the same church. We all went to elementary school together. And so the scripture says something, train up a child in the way he should go. So when he depart, he'll eventually come back. It's something like that, you know. But I finally figured out somewhere in my late 40s or 50s that most of us are living on the prayers of our parents.
I guess so. What are you doing? Look here. Waiting on you, young fella. Well, I was driving the How you doing? Oh my God. Hey, Carter. How you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
I just told heard that I've been coming in the front doors for 40 years.
Oh my.
40 years. My name is Oval L. Miller Sr. I'm a recovering alcoholic and heroin addict. I have 40 years sobriety. I've kept all my expectations. I am a worthwhile, important person.
Hey, road to recovery. This is my road to recovery. Yeah, road to recovery.
Oval Miller was born in Little Rock, Arkansas on October 21st, 1945. He is the oldest son of 4 children born to George and Odetta Miller. Mr. Miller attended private school and graduated at the top of his high school class in 1963. He was offered numerous athletic scholarships from several historically Black colleges and eventually chose to attend AM&N College in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. In April of 1983, Mr. Miller co-founded BASIC, the Black Alcohol Drug Service Information Center. BASIC was and still is the only culturally specific treatment model servicing predominantly African American men and women in the state of Missouri.
Now, this is the thing. You're about to enter the throne of the educational wizard. As the white folks was riding up and down this street screaming and hollering, we were here at this school here. This is the school I graduated. St. Bartholomew High School. The census for St. Bartholomew High School in 1963 was 12 students graduating from high school. And I was one of the 12. And the thing of it, we had lived through the riots. That street was crowded with protesters protesting the integration of Central High School, which we'll go by in a minute. But it was something to be afraid, frightened. If you can imagine throngs and throngs of people coming at you and you don't know why. You just know that you got to get safe. That was the environment from us, from kids. From 6 years old, all the way up to was 17, 18. Wary, fearful about the interaction, and a lack of hope.
Little Rock was not immune to the racist and discriminatory practices of Jim Crow and segregation. The 1954 ruling in Brown versus the Board of Education would open doors, at least in theory, for African American students to have fair access to education. Central High School made international headlines as angry local mobs protested in the streets, while the Arkansas National Guard blocked any attempts of Black students to enter the school. With support of the NAACP and other civic organizations, 9 courageous students, often referred to as the Little Rock Nine, would pioneer school integration in the South. These events were key in the civil rights movement, and with persuasion from Dr. Martin Luther King, President Eisenhower would send in federal troops to ensure the students were safely escorted to school. Many would feel the reverberation of stress, anxiety, and fear caused by the civil unrest occurring just mere blocks from the Miller family home. While the area has been declared a National Historic Site, complete with museum, the memories from this time are indelibly seared in Miller's memory.
What happened? You know, how many times have people asked me over the last 40 years, what happened? How did you end up being a heroin addict? Well, nobody could have ever convinced me that I would end up being addicted to drugs. Matter of fact, my father was an alcoholic, and I swore I would never be like him, never be an alcoholic. So when the separation came and she went, she went her way. She filed for divorce, and at that time, when you file for divorce, the sheriff come get you and put you out. So once the sheriff came and told me I had 10 or 15 minutes to get all I could gather, and I had to vacate the property, I called my friends, the fellows that we grew up with. They came pick me up, and I started drinking. Although I had said I would never be like Dad, I don't remember getting drunk, but I do remember drinking every day. I got frustrated. Uh, I felt that she had done me wrong, and how come she didn't act like Mama acted? Mama stayed with Dad no matter what, and why did she bail on me and go her separate ways? I felt I'd been written off. I felt people just, gave up on me. But this one night, because I was unhappy. I was unhappy as I could be. I still wanted my family back, but I didn't know how to get them back. So, when they were 5 and 6 years old, Barbara took them and moved them to California. I didn't even feel like I had the right to say, you can't do that, because I didn't have anything to offer, nothing. And that bothered me to no end, that I couldn't, the kids looked, they said, hey, Dad, you're not going to fight for us. There's nothing to fight with it. So, when that night we were down on the college campus, because now I'm still materialistically, it looks like I'm all right, but I'm not, because nothing would satisfy me. And so that night we were down aiming in college, sitting in the dorm, and someone passed the board around and said, man, you want to try this? I said, no, man, I don't want none of that stuff. I don't want to end up being no junkie. They said, oh, man, only weak-minded people end up being junkies, man. You ain't no weak-minded person. And he said, anyway, one time won't hurt you. This is a guy I grew up with. And so I took and snorted it, a little in one nostril, a little in the other. And for whatever reason, in less than, it wasn't even a minute, I don't think, something came over me that I can't even describe. But it was like somebody had released me of all responsibility, all remorse. And I got scared. I said, boy, nobody could feel this way. But what it was, I had stopped feeling. I stopped feeling and couldn't wait till the next day to try some more. It was the ultimate escape. It was the ultimate, it's like nothing else mattered. And it unleashed a demon inside of me that I can't even describe. From that day, sitting in that college dorm, I was as dangerous as any serial killer you could ever encounter. Nothing mattered. Nothing. I understand the desperation that I see on the street. I understand it because what desperate people do desperate things. And I had become so desperate to prove that I was not a failure.
take a moment. I'm deciding to put one foot in front of the other. This is my road to recovery.
Arbery had told my mom and dad that he had been living in a garage, which was actually a garage and not a garage apartment. And you know, and so I did say to him, I can't imagine how you are living, and I did say to him, if you want some assistance, some help, I think we can help you. And he was once again reticent in terms of saying whether he would be interested or not. I think we spoke again, probably either that evening or the next day. We had some conversation because by that time I had contacted the leader of my community, Sisters of Mercy in St. Louis, and asked her if there was anything we could do to help my brother who was involved in drugs. And at that time, the Sisters of Mercy owned a drug treatment center called Edgewood in St. Louis, associated with St. John's Mercy Medical Center. And I knew that there was a possibility there. And the person I called was Sister Rockledge. And she said to me without any hesitation, if your brother can come to St. Louis, can get here, we will not pay for him to come. But if he will get here, the Sisters of Mercy will take care of his drug treatment at Edgewood. And so I conveyed that to Oval and talked to Mom and Dad about it. Mom and Dad said that they would pay for a bus ticket for him to come, but it would be non-refundable. That evening, the other Sister of Mercy, Sister Jean Marie Sullivan, and I drove down to the bus station and waited there. And when and I think his bus was coming in once again around midnight, and we walked in, and there he was sitting in the bus station in this little jacket. You can imagine in January, this little parka type jacket with somebody else's name on the jacket, Willie, and a box, a little box next to his feet with shoes on them that were too small, because I could tell that immediately. And he stood up, and I gave him a hug, and so the thing is in the box were tools, a wrench and pliers, whatever. I thought they were truck repair tools. I was giving you the benefit of the doubt, and some underwear, and that's all that was in the box, But anyway, we drove him back out to Frontenac, to the convent, and Sister Jean Marie prepared some eggs for him, which were burnt because he's not a cook. And but he went on, and I got him situated in his bedroom, and that's kind of how things began for you here and there in St. Louis.
Well, the hardest thing was, once you get to the counter and they tell you the ticket can't be cashed in or exchanged, destination St. Louis, you got to resolve yourself that you're going to leave St. Louis, L.A. And I lived my life where there were people who wanted to do bodily harm, so I didn't have any alternative but to go get on that bus. The lady told me it left at a certain time, and I had a seat. I had used some drugs early on, but I knew it wasn't going to be enough to last me 52 hours. So I had to resolve myself that I was going to be sick. But as that bus turned out, I realized that this is the first time I'm leaving a town where I've been beaten. I've always been able to find a way to manage to escape. But now, as it turned out on the cloverleaf on Interstate 10, I realized that I got my tail tucked between my legs. I'm leaving here defeated. And I didn't blame the drugs. I blamed the people in the city. You know, this is a cold town. And by the time I got to Flagstaff, I was going through primary withdrawal. You know, I'm 6'6", sitting in a bus seat built for midgets, because there's no way in the world anybody 6'6" can be comfortable in a bus. And by the way, I've never rode another one. But it was difficult. There was a young white guy on the back of the bus, and he was going through withdrawal too. And so he kept asking me, you know, he kept calling me Willie, and I didn't know who the hell he was talking about. But I said, man, why you keep calling me Willie? He said, well, that's the name on your jacket, Willie. Didn't know what to expect. Everybody I'd been around who had been to treatment had failed. It was in the dope house. So I didn't have a lot of confidence that it was going to work. I knew that I had to. One thing I did know is that I had family in St. Louis, and they wasn't going to let me just die. Felt like I wanted to. But, you know, when you get there and Sis came up and put her arms around me and told me that God had saved me for a reason, you know, and that I needed to trust the people. And so I looked at her and said, trust, I don't even know these people. And she says, but your best thinking has got you here. What do you have to lose? And, you know, you start thinking about this is a brand new life. But what kind of life? Sis has been in the convent all her life, as far as I knew. She don't know nothing about the street. She don't know what I've been going through with. But I knew she cared. And I needed to trust. And that's what it was. It was blind trust. Whatever she said do, I did.
Hey, road to recovery. This is my road to recovery.
Los Angeles is integral to the recovery journey of Oval Miller, as here he encountered the apex of struggle with homelessness, hopelessness, and hitting rock bottom on Skid Row. But now a source of pride, as this is where his children grew up and developed into productive citizens, even as he transitioned from addiction to a life of sobriety and service.
I'm Barbara French. I was married to Oval Miller in 1963. And at the age of, I think I was 18 and he was 19. We lived in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we were married for 5 years. But during that marriage, we had 2 children. The firstborn is Nina Miller, and the second one was Oval Jr. Well, when I found out that Oval was addicted to drugs, was when the children had to be about, I would say about 12 and 13 years old. And I received a call from his mom. And she explained to me that he was sick, but she didn't really go into really details about how sick he was. But then when I talked to his father, then his father has said that he had been, you know, dealing with drugs because he was driving his truck, you know, out of town truck, you know, to deliver uh, whatever they delivered. But during that time, we were separated and divorced, and I had moved to California, and he was still in Little Rock. And the kids, I kind of shield them a little bit from that because they really didn't know, or I didn't think they knew as much as I knew about it until when we received the call that he was going into treatment and they wanted the kids to participate in Al-Anon. And so that's when the kids got involved. but I never got involved with going to, to Al-Anon or whatever. But whenever they would go to St. Louis, then they would go to, speak to the counselors and stuff. When the kids graduated from high school, and of course they had gotten jobs, and then he had opened up a clinic in St. Louis. He wanted them to come there and work with him in the clinic. I saw a change then, that he was on the road, a good road for recovery. And basically, I was not there in St. Louis, so I really don't know everything that went on there. I just know, when I would go to St. Louis, we would all get together for Christmas. Now, that's one thing. He, Katura, and my two kids, Marcus, grandkids, we all get together and have a nice Christmas together. So that was one thing. That was a tradition for years. And of course, if we were still there, it'd probably be a tradition that we all got together. He has made amends to me for the things that he had done when he recognized that, how it impacted the family. Matter of fact, I bought this picture here. I don't know if you want to see it. And he wrote this to me, and I thought it was worth saving, and saying how he felt about when we, got together, and he felt the things that he had done, against me, that he felt sorry for. Yeah.
One of the things is that my dad has always been my superhero. Uh, I remember as young as I was a little tot, always looking at him and seeing his features and looking at his gestures and how he smiled and so when my mom knew what kind of activity he was in when he was driving the truck, and I always wanted to be with him. And so I asked him, Dad, can I ride with you? And he didn't want to say, no. So he went in and talked to my mom, and my mom says, and they went off to the other side. And then I know she gave him the lowdown and take care of my son. But now that when we talked about reflecting back, my mom had a lot of, it took a lot to know that your son is getting ready to go with his dad, and his dad is addicted to drugs, and she okayed it. She okayed it, and I can't remember the age. I think I may have been in the 6th grade, maybe. And so me and my dad was on the road. I was with him. He was driving the semi truck. I remember it was a 1949 Kenwood that was old and primered gray, and it wasn't an attractive truck. But I was with my dad. No air conditioner. Only thing the heat you had is from the engine. So the first stop we did, we went to Las Vegas. We was pulling a load to Las Vegas. I was in there in the truck with him. And a lot of people look at Las Vegas as lights, camera, action. But a block, a mile off the strip was the undesirable area. And he pulled up there, and we pulled on the backside of a lot, and he parked the truck. He said, son, lock the doors and don't open the doors for nobody. But in the meanwhile, through that process, he was trying to teach me how to shift the gears and stuff to the truck. So when he said that and he left, I'm up here trying to mimic what he was telling me, the whole night. I'm jumping around a little bit, but, he would talk on the CB radio. He'd talk about the big O and the little O, with the hammer down, going to the westbound, and we out. We're in the Great Ghost and we out. So I was at awe with that. So I'm on the CB radio trying to mimic my dad. I'm like, the big O, the little O, and da-da-da-da-da. And so that was my entertainment while he was gone. Then that morning he came back to the truck, and he said, son, I was gambling, and I lost all the money. Well, okay, all right. But see, him being my superhero, I didn't need to eat or drink. Well, at that time, knowing when we were stopping at different restaurants, and I know he would leave, go to the restroom, and come back, and we had restaurants, then I used to catch him. No, I knew he was on something. It wasn't normal. But one of the good things that about my father is that we come from a good family and with morals and values, and he would never lose sight of that, no matter how his addiction took off. And he would always want to take care of his family. I'm fortunate to have him as my dad. Me and my brother was talking a few days ago, and they always say, "Man, you just like your dad. You just like your dad. Look at you with your legs crossed like your dad." And I took it like they was just making a funny. But I started, looking. I started looking, reflecting back, and looking at my hands, and looking at my feet, and looking at my expressions. I said, "You're right. I'm just like my dad." And that part right there just said, I'm just like my superhero.
So at some point, my mom brought my brother and I into the house and said that your dad had been sick. He's been sick. And we kind of knew that something was going on, but we didn't really know the depths of it, and that he had entered into a hospital in St. Louis, and that he was going to be getting the help that he needed. And for me, that was like my prayers had been answered. So even if, which was never an expectation even for us to even be, like, to get back close or to have that father and daughter relationship. I never asked for that. I never expected that. I just needed to know that somewhere in the world that my dad was safe, I loved him, and he was going to be all right. But lo and behold, I got way more than I bargained for. I got way more than I expected. When my dad went into treatment, he called and he shared with me that he was in treatment. And as he was going through his recovery process, he wanted to apologize for the things that he had done, promises that he had broken. And I remember him saying to me, so, Daddy's not going to break any more promises. And, I was kind of like, well, okay, but like, what does that really mean? And so I asked him, because at first I wasn't used to asking. I just, I kind of kept quiet. I didn't want to cause any trouble. I wasn't asking too many questions. But that particular moment, I found myself asking, so what does that really mean? And he said, what that means is what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do. And if I can't do it, then I'm not going to say I'm going to do it. And I will tell you, from that point on, when I was 16, yeah, everything he said he was going to do, he did. And if he couldn't do it, he never committed to it. There was no expectation for him to do something he couldn't do. So at 16 is when he and I, as he was in recovery, and I remember taking a trip down that, soon after he got out of treatment, I had taken a trip to St. Louis, and he picked me up from the airport, and that's when the closeness of our relationship really began. I always loved him, and I knew he always loved me, but at 16 is when he was the person, no matter what he was going through for me, he was the person that I could tell anything. It's just been a journey with my dad in his recovery. I've gotten way more than I ever would have thought. As I said before, my daily prayer was just that he be safe and that he didn't hurt anybody, that nobody hurt him. And since his recovery, we've had a wonderfully close relationship, and he knows this, and I shared this with him too. Yeah, I missed him during my childhood. Of course, there's things that we could have done when we were young, when I was younger. But I told him that the time that God saw fit for him to be in my life, when I was 16, I wouldn't trade that for, 0 to 15. The 16 on, even now, is so much more.
One of the things that I've shared with Couture over the last couple of days coming out, something that my niece said to me when things were really tough. She says, God is not going to let us fail as long as the agenda is right. And so I'm wearing back and forth a little bit, but I've always tried to keep the agenda right. And nobody would have shared with me or told me that my life would end up the way it has. I tell my wife all the time, I says, we've had a hell of a ride. A hell of a ride. Who would have ever thought that our lives would be that I don't know how you duplicate this. I'm surrounded by my family. I couldn't have scripted this no better if I had tried. So now, what's the next 40 years gonna be?
40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Living
Gotta
since
do
99
it.
and 100. You better. I
Right.
got some clients that are 100 years old.
Right. That's right. The question is who you gonna live with.
So my dad got sober shortly after I was born. So I think I always kind of in the back of my head, and as I was growing up and as I got older, kind of felt like I felt like a pretty significant catalyst to him, changing his life around, because it was shortly after I was born. So that felt good, and I think my dad was always in my life. My mom was awesome. Grew up and as a single mom because my parents separated. They met here in LA, which is where I stay now, and I was born in LA. And then when they went their separate ways, my mom moved to Little Rock and my dad moved to St. Louis. So my dad moved to St. Louis to get well, and my mom moved to Little Rock to get back close to her family, where I have family that stays in Little Rock. And then, obviously I've heard the stories from my parents, but shortly after when my dad got well, they tried to get back together and kind of rekindle, what they had. And obviously he was well now. She had kind of moved on. And it just didn't work out for whatever reasons. They had grown apart a little bit. And but they always told me that my mom always said, hey, I want you to make sure that, you don't forget about Marcus and make sure that he's a part of your life. And he always was. Since I was younger, I would always, I think maybe 3 or 4, I started visiting my dad every Christmas and every summer vacation. When I was out of school, it was a big thing. I get a chance to get on an airplane, young, single mom, kid, growing up in the hood. In the summer and Christmas, I get on the airplane and go and fly to St. Louis to visit my dad. This was, obviously my dad had turned his life around. He was growing a new business, Basic, and he was doing very well, working very hard, building a better life for him and his family. And I got a chance to see that growth and really see my dad always worked hard. He always worked hard to make sure that, people understood and to earn, the help that he received from people that helped him out to his passion and his promise to God that he would, spend his life helping others. He always worked hard to make good on that promise. And I witnessed that hard work, and it was important for me growing up to see a Black male successful, and the way that he got it was working hard. He wasn't, I didn't see him on the streets, and I didn't see him hustling and panhandling. So I didn't get that piece of it. I saw him build basic. And I saw him working late nights, 2 and 3 times a night. This when I would spend the summer with him. I would spend in the house, and he would come home late, and we would go out and do things, of course. But during the times he was building the business, so he would work late, and so that's what I had in my mind. That's what I thought success was. You got to work hard. If you got to stay late, and you need to do what you need to do to make things happen. And that's what I witnessed. So I think that was a very important part of my growth and growing up, and what I learned, again, growing up in the neighborhoods, Black males who have money, slanging dope, pimps or whatever. And I saw some of that, of course. My mom kept me very busy in church and school. And so I didn't get sucked into that, playing sports and all that kind of stuff. But then I did have this male role model who was building a business, who was working hard and being successful, and kind of changing his life around.
I have been his hardest critic. But I felt like he didn't need anyone to pamper him. He needed someone to be honest with him so that he could be honest with himself.
When I got out of treatment, I stayed at the convent on 8.5 acres of land out there in St. Louis, Frontenac. And she would stop by because she was living in the convent. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm just taking a rest." She said, "Taking a rest?" I said, "No, you're not taking a rest. You're sloughing off." I said, "No, I'm not, sis." I said, "Yes, you are." She said, "I'll tell you what. You got any money?" I said, "No." She said, "How can you be tired and need to slough off if you broke?" I never forgot that. Can't be tired and broke. Something's wrong.
Mr. Miller is quick to acknowledge those who played key roles in helping to establish BASIC, including wife Keturah Ibrahim, Father Edmund Griezadek, Charlotte Otley, and Mr. Don Hubbard.
I was a nurse at Care Unit Hospital, and all the treatment center people were invited over to open house. And that was the day that I met Over. I don't want to brag, but I was looking pretty good that day. And he kind of lost his mind. But he asked for my phone number. After going back and forth with one another for a couple of days, we became friends. And we became more than friends. The thing that he had that I wanted was an opportunity to go through a counselor training program. He had just finished one, and he had opened up BASIC. And I had wanted to do that as well because I had always wanted to be a counselor or a therapist ever since I was a young kid. And I was discouraged by my crazy father telling me Black people don't go to therapy. That's what he told me. He says, it's not a good choice for you. So when this opportunity came up, I was really grateful. I know when you go to college, you and get a degree in counseling or anything associated with counseling, you learn how to do things from a middle-class male perspective. And that's not going to work in the Black community. It's just not going to do it. We have enough male perspectives going on in the Black community already. So I wanted to look at the whole person. I'm a firm believer that one of the main reasons that Black people have less success with their sobriety is because of their codependency. They grew up in post-traumatic slave syndrome mentality, and it's hard to just shake that. And even if you get clean and sober, the memories and the feelings associated with that community are still there, and it keeps taking you back to the same place. So based on the things that Overland learned from Peter Bell, and he had shared with me, and I met Peter Bell myself later on, I took on the challenge. And when I worked at St. John's in their codependency program, learning everything I could about codependency, but also keeping in mind that I had to be culturally sensitive in my understanding of codependency. It was going to be a little bit different. The same, but different. I don't want to minimize the stress that any addict or alcoholic's family goes through, because they go through a lot. But Black folks go through a lot for so many other reasons. This just mounds on top of it. And I needed people to understand that. As I was learning to be a counselor myself, at my 6th year, I left St. John's, and Over gave me an opportunity to come and do counselor training in the Black community. So I took the things that I learned there and added the cultural sensitivity that I had developed over the past 6 years after that. And that's what I brought to Basic. For the ones that have been diligent, we turned out some good counselors. And I would say the majority of the Black counselors in the St. Louis area came through Basic. And the word on the street was, if you worked at Basic for at least a year, people never call and ask us for any information on a former worker. They know if you survive Basic for a year, you know what you're doing. And that's always made me proud. I was sober for a year because working and training, and that's when you and I met, because you had came to the hospital and said, there's a meeting set up with you and Father Ed Griesdick. I said, am I familiar with him? I know. He said, well, yeah, he's part of the program that we have here, and he wants to talk with you. And so when I went in, you asked me what did I want to do with what I had learned. And I said I want to take what I've learned here and take it to the inner city, because I don't think that my people in the inner city aren't getting the same message.
Right.
The structure and the discipline.
Not getting the same advantage, privileges of
Right.
helpers.
That's right.
Right.
And so that's how it started. I was excited about it. But it was more than just him saying, come on. We met every Thursday at 2:00. Right. Every Thursday, and he would go over strategies and
then we began to, and again, this is a little bit of how, through connections, I call it, my family had been involved in a big corporation in St. Louis, and through that connection, my father knew members of big corporations, and so I was introduced to some of these people. At that time, a company called McDonnell Douglas, which is now Boeing, but and then a man named Jim McDonald, who was active there, he took a real interest in, that was the beginning of farming of the boards. And that was helpful because these people helped raise a certain amount of money.
We couldn't have made it.
Couldn't have made it without that. And so we had on the board at one time the representatives and sometimes high places of some of the major corporations in St. Louis.
Right. Well, we had Ralston Purina, Monsanto, which is then we had McDonnell Douglas, and I'm thinking it was another one there too. But those corporations were brought in, and because Father Ed would solicit their help just to say, bring them down to the office, and let's see what we're doing.
Well, I didn't want to support Basic. When Oval came to me and he said something about a Black alcohol and drug problem, I said, why is it that Blacks always have to lead the statistics?
Right.
And why you got to come to me over a Black problem that's the worst? Well, here I am. And it's 2021.
And I still love Basic. I'm still attached to them, and we're still making a difference to millions of people. And that story is one that, though we chuckle about, that we have laughed all the way to transforming lives. My cousin in the next generation from me, who had everything in life, he wasn't poor, he was very upper middle class, went to the best school, smart as a whip, handsome. And I discovered that he was drug addicted. I could not understand that. How? I'm right here. How did that happen? My family is right here. No one in our family had had this problem. So it rang a bell when Oval came and educated me. See, the beauty of Basic is that it's an educational process. We interrupt the cycle of abuse by educating people about that cycle, by letting them understand that they are impacted by the community. They're impacted by society. They're impacted by their families. They're impacted by their own genealogy, their own cultural exposure. So it takes all of that for transformation. When you understand that, when you educate yourself as well as those around you, then we can move the dial.
Author, broadcaster, Emmy Award winner are just a few of the descriptors for Charlotte, who has spent decades in the public eye, both in St. Louis and major markets like New York. She has stayed connected to the community through service, including assisting recovering women through a subsidiary of Basic, now named in her honor.
The worst time in my life, I had lost my father. I had lost my business. I had come home to start all over again. I had lost my home. I had lost all the material trappings that one evaluate you on being important, being a VIP. But you know what? The same thing that SEMO women that we try to teach them, I never lost my will. I never lost my joy. I never lost my faith. And I got through it. And I never stopped loving. No one could take those principles away from me. And those are the principles that Basic, SEMO, and any of the things that we do are transparent, they're transitional, and will be the basis, the root of our surviving and sustaining and changing lives forever. I'll stand by that.
It was such a strange thing because I was in the north part of the city when Charlotte Otley, who was the executive producer of KMOV, called me on the phone and said, I got somebody I want you to meet, but he's only going to give you 10 minutes. And she said, you got to hurry up and get here because they're going into a press conference. Well, I didn't have no idea who she was talking about, that it was Mr. Hubbard. He was a fight promoter. So I rushed like all our Dickens to get over to the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. And he, as usual, he said, look, man, I got press conferences, I got things going on promoting this fight, this and that, and I started out. That was, 26 years ago. And that's how we started. And the rest of, lead into it.
Well, I mean, I tried not to meet over. Because I asked Charlotte, I said, man, Charlotte, come on now. I know her from NBC News. I said, what did he do? And she said, well, he's got this program, Black people for drugs and alcohol rehab program. I said, Charlotte, please. I said, I've been around, I've seen all the hustlers. I know all the shakedown programs. I ain't got time for this dude. It took 10 minutes, because I'm doing this for you. So he started talking about this program. And then he said something about an alumni. I said, what kind of alumni? He said, he said, well, man, he started explaining to me what the alumni was all about and how he has hired people to come to work for him who's graduated in this program. Then he started to talk about the background of the program and the training and the kind of training that his wife did and her background and her expertise and how they put this collaboration together and how he had gone through a process himself similar to what he had put together. So then they got to be 20 minutes. And I said, man, come on, go with me to the press conference. I think we had Joe Frazier in town, and I don't know if Ali was with us on that trip. Ali had to be with us on that trip because I got a picture of us in there with Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali, and myself. In the background of the picture said St. Louis. So I put those guys on hold. I kind of pushed over to the side for him to hang around, and we talked. And so I said, tell me more about Basic. And I said, man, why you call it black? Because funders run from things that's called black up front. And he said, well, because that's what I've dedicated my life to, helping my people. And my people are black people, and I want to do this. I'm having a senior moment, but there was a guy who was a baseball player. Ozzie Smith. Mm-hmm. And I said, Ozzie, you ever heard about this program called Basic? Ozzie said, yeah. I said, what you think about it, man? You're here in St. Louis? He said, man, I think they're doing a good job. I've heard good things about them, et cetera, et cetera. And so from talking to Ozzie, talking to Charlotte and trying to put some things together, going to St. Louis a couple of times, and then we had an attempt to get the program here in New Orleans, and we had a little fundraiser for him, and we were able to get Frankie Beverly and Mays to do a concert here in New Orleans. So the thing about it is what Basic is the way that Over makes the presentation. He don't come across as slick, a hustler, and he can technically back up what he says. So it makes a difference in people who want to believe in you.
Of all the cities in this country, you decide to connect with a drug recovery program that's here in St. Louis. Now, they're located on Jefferson Avenue near Washington Avenue. You were drawn to them, though, because they didn't use methadone. They didn't use any other drug substitutes in terms of getting people to recovery.
Right, because, everything else that I know of over the years has been like they get you from one drug to another drug.
Which is from heroin to methadone.
And methadone is worse than heroin because it gets you in your bones and everywhere else, and it's harder to get off than the heroin, Mm-hmm.
I said, man, how you gonna get a junkie from being a junkie without giving him a pill? He said, no. He said, once you get his mind together, he don't need anything. He said, my job is to get the guy's mind together. So then Over called me and said, man, we got this anniversary, and we got everybody coming to this big function, man. It's a hotel that everybody's got to wear a black tie and tuxedos. And so I said, you got to be kidding. He said, yeah, man. He said, we're celebrating. I can't remember what the anniversary was. He said, we're celebrating. So, okay, I got my tuxedo. My wife came. We flew in, and I'm staying in the hotel, and I look, and all these ex-dope fiends are pulling up in limousines and long. I said, well, what is this? Dope fiends on parade? So he said, man, nobody knows. He said, everybody's dressed up, everybody's proper. He said, and they coming in here to celebrate their victory over themselves. And man, that was a wonderful experience. Basic had his own musicians, had his own choir. I said, man, I didn't know you all could really come off the drugs and do it all like this, but here it is, right on parade, It was wonderful, all I could say is what a victory for the program, At the Ritz-Carlton, can you believe it?
front of the other. This is my road to recovery.
We set up Basic of New Orleans, and I'm proud to say that I was a piece of that particular puzzle. We made an imprint in New Orleans, first of all, because we were the only Black program to do that. The thing is that you have to first believe in the mission. And the mission is first you change your life and then you change others' lives by being what Mr. Miller used to use as a sunburst theory. And that means you show rays of sun in a community where it may not be anything positive happening at that time. New Orleans was 70% Black. So you can imagine what the devastation was on that. But here comes this company out of St. Louis with a mission, and the mission is to make a difference in Black people. At that time, it was very hard when Katrina hit because it basically wiped out everything that we had. It took our buildings away. It took our foundation away. And so it was very hard for us to provide a service in an environment where we didn't have anything. Our goal is to reset, is what we call it. We came back, we in St. Louis, we reset. And some of the things that come off of resetting is treatment wheel travel, so to speak. And that's a mobile way of traveling to other states and providing services, even though we may not be stationed there. We are stationed there from a mobile viewpoint, somewhat ahead of its time, because now technology has brought us Zoom. But before there was Zoom, it was mobile treatment. And I would like to say that Mr. Miller in Basic, his vision and his dream is why we are able to do that today. The other part of that is I love this so much that what it did to my family is that I became a counselor through this. And I was one of the first people in the training program. And let me tell you, if you go through Basics training program, you can work anywhere in the United States of this country. I left Basic, which was one thing that Mr. Miller said. I don't ever want anybody to leave. But if you do leave, I want you to be positive enough for them to wonder, where did you get that training that you have? I can tell you that I was very successful in this field and worked for some of the major treatment programs. Nobody does it like Basic. Remember that. Nobody.
The greatest day of my life was when I woke up that one morning and I had my appetite back and I didn't want no dope. I said, God, just keep this up right where it is right now. You'll be all right. Thanks, Pete. Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping carrying the message. I used to get mad when anybody would come here and leave. Yeah. And my wife told me, she said, but they're transmitting what we taught. That's right. So it just keeps on going. You know, you just can't hold on. Nick is the one that keeps telling you. You can't keep everybody in meeting.
I came to Basic as a client in 1987, addicted to drugs. My primary drug of choice was alcohol and cocaine. After discovering the Basic program truly by accident while I was in inpatient treatment, I decided to try to come into the program. What I found here was a warm atmosphere of people who decided that they loved other recovering people. And they took me in with open arms. They guided me through a recovery process using the 12-step program. And it was culturally specific. It met the needs that, for me as a Black man living in urban St. Louis here, of how to get there. And Mr. Miller was marvelous. I find him to be one of the most charismatic men that I've ever met in my life. Not only did he help me get sober, and I've been sober now for over 30 years, he also helped me formulate a career. Basic was one of the only treatment centers in the city of St. Louis that had their own counselors training program. And he allowed me, working through the alumni, to become one of the members of the counseling training program in 1990. It takes 3 years to get certified from that position, and you have to learn the 12 core functions of counseling. But through his guidance and the teachings of his wife, Keturah Ibrahim, I was able to get my certification in 1993 and become a direct line service counselor for the Basic program. That's the marvelous journey that I've been through with Mr. Miller. And I find it to be most rewarding. Nobody could have told me in 1987 when I came to this program that I would meet with dignitaries from across this nation and internationally who talk about helping people recover from substance abuse from all cultures and all backgrounds. It's been a marvelous experience, and I want to thank God for introducing me to Mr. Miller and all the things that he's helped me accomplish in my lifetime.
During the course of treatment, I really realized that Basic was a family. I was able to find people who really, truly understand what my problem was because I only always felt that I was unique and I was the only one that had the problem. But treatment allowed me to understand that there was others through the group process, the fellowship of AA, NA, and sponsorship. Those support groups allowed me to maintain my recovery. I feel very blessed to be able to be a part of this program, not only as an alumni, but also as an employee, to provide that service in our community that is truly needed at this time. Mr. Miller is actually very unique in his own right because through this program, he developed an educational program based on his life story. And that program has allowed others in this community to flourish as far as their family life, employment, obtaining stable housing, improving relationships in this community, and become upstanding citizens in this community.
When I saw Basic, and one of the most inspiring things was being at a meeting one night. And I used to go every Thursday night and have the guy say, "My name is Joe Brown, dope fiend. I've been clean and dry 15 years, met all my expectations, and I'm a very important person." Hallelujah. I said, I remember that today. I said, I got to come back here every Thursday. And all those guys, they were clean and dry.
Sometimes Oval gets down because he feels like, what have I accomplished? And I remind him of all of those people who come back to Basic every year or for every event and who tell him, "Thank you, Mr. Miller. You don't remember me, Mr. Miller, but I was in the program this year." And I say, those are the people who, they're your legacy.
When I seen somebody that looked like me, Mr. Miller, that was drug and alcohol free, I said, I got a chance. I got a chance, man, and I've been doing this thing 29 years consistently, one day at a time. Today I'm celebrating 29 years, that's why I got this song. Represent. Thank you.
You know, when I was in treatment, I didn't believe treatment would work. I didn't believe it. I just believed that it was someplace. Everybody I'd seen that gone to treatment, substance abuse treatment, they failed. So I didn't have any confidence that this was going to work. The minister at the thing, Father John Mason, he says, you will be successful. You will survive. And I said, well, how come you're so adamant about that? He said, because now you know that there's another way and you don't have to be, act, or live the lifestyle you live. I wanted that so bad. I didn't know how to believe it. But I remember my mother taught me about prayer. God answers all prayers. And I prayed that night for sobriety. I asked God to give me sobriety. And I'd spend the rest of my life helping others. That was the key for me. Service. I'd been a taker, and I had to be a giver. And I got a chance to do that, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. No matter what the experiences have been, the good times and the bad, It's one thing that I'm assured of without any hesitation, is that I continue on this road to recovery.
Years go by like a moment. I'm deciding to put one foot in front of the other. This is my road to recovery. Life can't take it for granted, so I'm deciding to put one foot in front of the other. I'm on my road to recovery. I had a dream, deep in the dark. It wasn't a flame, it was a spark. Fighting to live in a world that's cold, but I never, ever, ever, ever let it go. And you got a dream, I see in your eyes. You might have been down for a long time, but you can rise. So don't give up on your road to recovery. Road to recovery. Years go by like a moment. I'm deciding to put one foot in front of the other. This is my road to recovery. Life can't take it for granted, so I'm deciding to put one foot in front of the other. I'm on my road to recovery.
Hey, thank you all.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
It's been a journey.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a good one.
Yeah.
It's been a good journey.
And I want the world to know.
Causing the sun to rise each morning and give strength to face the day.
Blessed in every
It's not me who deserves the wonderful and good.
It's not me.
Not done all that I should. I am grateful.
I am so grateful. Think I want to testify.
I am grateful.
How good the Lord's been to me. He brought me out through a world of addiction. Now I'm standing in front of you free. See, I've never ever had love that stand right by my side. Lord, I'll be your witness to the day that I am grateful. Lord, I'm so grateful, so grateful, so grateful.